dressed in tuxedo, with the tails of dress flowing behind him as he walks out on stage center. He opens the case set on the flower-bedecked table, and the audience gasps at the sight of it. Oh, yes. It's a famed and priceless Stradivarius made by the family of Antonio Stradivari, who lived in Italy 1644 to 1737. The musician genteelly lifts the treble instrument of the violin, nearly horizontal, supported by his left arm with the base of the glorious masterpiece gingerly pressed against his left shoulder and collarbone. He expertly applies with his marvelous and experienced fingers a firm and resolute pressure. He lifts his bow and superbly draws its resined surface across the strings. And as the mechanical vibrations are transmitted through the elastic medium of air, and the sensation produced by the stimulation of our organs of hearing, we soar away with him on clouds of mellifluous ecstasy as the maestro enchants us with Tchaikovsky's violin concerto. Oh, what an indescribable joy, appreciated to its fullest only by men and angels. As we described this incident, did we realize how much maintaining integrity under pressure was involved? Let's explain. Princes and kings made demands of production by Stradivari, but he maintained integrity under pressure and never allowed it to cause him to take less time and produce an inferior product, and as a result, his name is lived to this day. The musician never gave up in maintaining integrity under pressure. The demands of this world and its pleasures, he gave up and spent hours every day of his life for decades to become the superlative artist he was and to have the esteemed privilege of playing the Stradivarius. The integrity just described is admirable. But when you analyze it, the integrity both of Stradivari and the musician was to discipline, to things, and to one's own conviction. However, there is the privilege of all of us here being able to show an integrity of a much more noble nature. In the Proverbs, we are invited to display the described integrity. In the 2nd chapter, verse 6, Jehovah himself gives wisdom, and out of his mouth there are knowledge and discernment. For the upright ones he will treasure up practical wisdom, and for those walking in integrity he is a shield by observing the paths of judgment. And he will guard the very way of his men of loving kindness. In that case, you will understand righteousness and judgment and uprightness, the entire course of what is good. Now note there in verse 7, he says there is an opportunity for all of us to walk in integrity. To whom? Not to things, not to a personal discipline in gaining a prominence or notoriety or the admiration of other people, but an integrity to God. The Hebrew word for integrity is tom, and it means complete, full, perfect, spent, without fault or defect. And it's related to a Latin word integer, which means whole number. So we are called upon, why not show a complete, faultless integrity to God and maintain that integrity even under pressure? Well, the first one to break his integrity was a spirit creature. In Ezekiel, the 28th chapter, we have the shameful course outlined that was followed by one also, perfect in a sense, as we will read, king of Tyre. And the spirit creature, Satan the devil, is alluded to as comparing with this course of the king of Tyre here by Ezekiel chapter 28, verses 12 through 15. And note it's in the form of a dirge, verse 12. Son of man, lift up a dirge, a sad song concerning the king of Tyre, and you must say to him, this is what the Lord Jehovah has said. You are sealing up a pattern full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. Now let's pause there. Another translation says, you set the seal of perfection. In other words, the king of Tyre, as a neighboring nation to the Israelites, set the example, a perfect example of good relations with God's nation of people. As Satan the devil, as a spirit creature in the beginning, was the seal, the sum of perfection. In Eden, the garden of God, we read in verse 13, you proved to be. Now, the king of Tyre was never in the Garden of Eden. How could that apply to him? Well, there was a seaport by the name of Beth Eden in his territory, but its geographical position of his kingdom took also the Mount Lebanon slopes. And it was beautiful, paradisaic in a topographical makeup, or as far as the mountains and the valleys and the beautiful cedars of Lebanon. So it was compared to an Eden of God, just like the condition Satan the devil dwelt in at paradise earth, in the Garden of Eden section. But what happened? Well, it says every precious stone was your covering, ruby, topaz, jasper, chrysolite, onyx, jade, sapphire, turquoise, emerald, and gold was the workmanship of your setting and of even your sockets in you. Well, kings wear garbs of precious stones. The king of Tyre did. And in the day of your being created, they were made ready. What does that mean? The king of Tyre didn't have to work for all this. He got it by inheritance. He didn't have to scratch. He didn't have to know hard times. He came into a beautiful condition, just like Satan did. In the beginning, before he was Satan, an angel put in a lovely position of responsibility. But what happened? Well, there was a time you walked in the midst of the fiery stones, verse 14 said. In verse 15, you were found faultless in your ways in the day of your being created until unrighteousness was found in you. Well, the Tyrian kings began to leave walking in the midst of stones of fire, in other words, in a pure way in God's eyes in their treatment of Israel. Satan the devil left his walking in the stones of fire, a pure walking course, by lusting after position. And God even sent Joel, Amos, and Ezekiel to condemn the Tyrian kings. And as they broke their integrity, these kings toward God's people in a good covenant relationship with them, so to speak, because they helped build the temple of Jehovah, supplied the cedars of Lebanon, so Satan let Jehovah down and broke his integrity. He was far then from perfect. And now this integrity infringer is determined to drag to the bottom Jehovah's faithful integrity possessors by pressure from all possible sources. And every one of us have felt that pressure in one degree or another, and we expect it, do we not, to intensify as we approach the Great Tribulation. That pressure can sometimes be that like Job experienced in the 2nd chapter, namely, from family. Look what he had to endure here in the way of pressure. Beginning in verse 9, finally his wife came to him. How much closer could a party be to him? And said, are you yet holding fast your integrity? Curse God and die. But Job, in Hebrew, or Job, said to her, as one of the senseless women speaks, you speak also. Shall we merely accept what is good from the true God and not also accept what is bad? And in all this, Job did not sin with his lips. And even his companions came and tried to ask him to give in or to examine himself. He had lost his relationship with God. But he did not curse God under that pressure. And many of you have experienced family pressure. In fact, probably every one of us could say that. And regardless of the circumstances, we took the bad with the good. If Jehovah permitted it, we thank God for the privilege of remaining faithful to him and showing him our integrity. Other types of pressure being put upon Jehovah's people today are in the area of morality. Moral pressures to break our integrity with God and besmirch his name by reproachful conduct. That's not a new trick of Satan. We look into Numbers, the 25th chapter, we see unhappily many succumbed to that type of pressure. They did not maintain their integrity. Here the Israelites were on the plains of Moab, ready to go into a promised land. It says Israel, in the first verse, was dwelling in Shittim, and there the people started to have immoral relations with the daughter of Moab. And the women went calling the people to sacrifice to their gods, and the people began to eat and bow down to their gods. So Israel attached itself to the Baal of Peor. This could have been Chemosh, the one to whom human sacrifice was given. Baal of Peor. Peor in Hebrew means a cleft or a rock. Their immoral rites no doubt took place on mountains or the sides of mountains. Well, Jehovah's anger began to blaze against Israel. Hence Jehovah said to Moses, "Take all the head ones of the people and expose them to Jehovah toward the sun, that the burning anger of Jehovah may turn back to Israel." And Moses said to the judges of Israel, "Each one of you kill his men who have had an attachment to the Baal of Peor." So a slaying took place, and those Jews who were guilty of immoral conduct, they were slain and exposed in the sun.